Okay, so what I'd like to do is I will start now because I don't want to miss out on the opportunity because I do have a lot of information. So ladies, welcome. We're going to get started now and I will set into this presentation. So I really appreciate you ladies are here. So let's get things started. So welcome, and I really appreciate the time. I know this is an evening, it's cold in many places around Sydney right now. It's definitely cold here. So I really hope you're prepared with a pen and paper because you're going to need to take notes because there's a lot of information of value I hope you'll be taking on board tonight. Also, I emailed you a worksheet for communicating effectively. I will be referring to that during the masterclass. There won't be any sell here, just a simple invite if you want some more support moving forward. So get closer, effective communication for women to build a deeper connection. So much to learn there because unfortunately we're not really learning how to have intimate, challenging conversations. So this is what it's all about. So who am I? I'm Amanda. I'm a couples coach. So I help couples to a better future together by helping them turn big, overwhelming relationship problems into a series of small, doable changes. I'm formally trained in emotional intimacy and behavioral psychology, which I studied before becoming, of course, a coach. I am a Sydney-based relationship coach, and I'm an author of several ebooks and co-founder of Retune with my husband, John. I've presented keynotes at various conferences and events and facilitate weekend workshops in Sydney for couples to learn how to do relationships well. Because unfortunately, we're not taught it. So why not learn while we can, eh? So what is this about? We are in a place now where we have so many more resources available to us to learn things. So this masterclass is a sense about what is a relationship and how did we get where we are now? Because we inadvertently derail our conversations, and how we can have a better conversation to resolve an issue is something that we can grasp along the way through lessons or mistakes and lessons. So how to make a better conversation is really important. There's so much to know what goes on behind that and how to break unhealthy dialogue patterns. So what is an intimate relationship? We all have our own meaning of what a relationship means for us. But in general, we want to receive and give love and feel safe and valued in our relationships. The definition of a relationship is not two people. It's the space between. This is something I came across some time ago, and it had such a profound epiphany that I realized that there's so much in essence about what is a relationship. It actually has its own identity, which brings us to the concept my husband and I created, which is the relationship field. It's all about the small things often. And we often say that foreplay starts at breakfast because every engagement we have within our relationship puts us in the mood or doesn't. We need to be aware that relationship also has its own identity. There are so many things involved in our relationship, from culture, from what we bring in from various travels, our experiences, what we want out of a relationship, expectations that may be explicit and implicit. There are our needs, wants, and desires. And unfortunately, what surfaces so much in our relationships are our insecurities and our triggers. So how do we navigate that? Because we want so much from our partner to help us pave the way. But as we move into our relationships, what we discover, there are many dynamics. So what are you putting into your relationship field? Are you nurturing it, looking after the weeds, making sure that they don't destroy your other plants? Not too much Roundup, because that's a bad thing. But there's a lot to be said for having sunshine and beautiful moods and happiness within our relationship. But if we have a mess, then that comes to be with our messy communication. Are we putting in hand grenades? Are we actually starting arguments and not having successful resolutions? The quality of our relationships really does determine the quality of our lives. So where we were at the beginning and then the middle isn't necessarily where we are now. And this is an accumulation of small things often. The daily interactions of fondness, admiration, and appreciation are incredibly impactful and fundamental for us to feel that we matter and that we're seen. So focusing on what matters, the small things sometimes can get in the way because it's the nitty logistics of everyday living. But don't sweat the small stuff. And we forget to celebrate the important things as well. We have many things to celebrate. We have milestones in our relationships that we should be paying more attention to, I feel, and working together as a unit, making it always an us and a we is all about us having a relationship. We have a latecomer. Hello. Now, moving forward, something which is really important in our relationships, and it's what we actually want from them. And there are 3 levels to that. If we want the spark, we're exploring new things together, doing fun, exciting, outside of the familiar. We need to be pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, and doing things together in that way does become a really memorable time because we're creating memories. Growing together and sharing experiential intimacy is extremely important for the spark. Now, if we want comfort and certainty, that's different. We do the things that we are familiar with, that's cozy, comfortable, and feels good. If we want emotional connection, we share open communication where we are more vulnerable with ourselves and each other. We do things that enable us to connect. We share open-hearted, vulnerable communication, expressing fears, insecurity, needs, and our desires. Something I'd like to bring to our attention is now our words. All that we had before, which was the spark, the security and comfort and connection, comes from our dialogue. Now, this underpins all our engagements and communication. So we want to feel seen, heard, and understood, valued, and cared for. And it's in our behavior, our attitudes. Now, language has a power, and we should never underestimate how we use our words, how we show up in our relationship with each other, because our words can hurt each other, but also our words can heal. Now, this I'd like to take an advantage now. This is someone else's work. Many of you may have heard of Dr. Sue Johnson. She's a world-renowned relationship psychologist, and she's an expert at attachment style behavior in adult relationships. Now, ARE is, are you there? Are you with me? It's a breakup of a few things. Firstly, accessibility. Can I reach you? Now, realistically, can I reach you? What does it mean? Staying open to your partner even when you have doubts and feel insecure. It means being willing to struggle to make sense of your emotions so that your emotions aren't overwhelming. You're tuning in to your partner. We also have responsiveness. Now, can I rely on you to respond to me emotionally? That has many layers. But what we can see, it's really tuning into your partner and showing your emotions, your needs, and your fears, and that they do have an impact on each other. Accepting and placing a priority on your partner's emotional signals and sending clear signals of comfort and care towards your partner so you do care about what they need and what matters to them. Engagement. Do I know you'll value me and stay close? This is really, really common where we find people trip over themselves in this particular context. You need to be absorbed and attracted and captivated, involved with each other. Emotionally engaged means the special attention that you only give that special one, your partner. Gazing at them, touching them. If their love language is touch, it's very, of course, well received, and that's where they want it to be. But being emotionally present, that's what it's all about as well. Now, we all have an emotional resume. Some people call it baggage, the stuff we bring along into our relationships. This can be so much more than what people say is our insecurities. It's our family history, which is history that is in our past where our wounds are, but current family dynamics is what we're dealing with as well. Previous relationship experience. It's our beliefs, our values, our expectations, our careers, hobbies, interests, passions, goals, and dreams. Now, our needs and insecurities, they do need to be communicated. And we have our triggers, which are embedded from our childhood wounds. So when we're in our relationship, we know it's so important to us and we want to feel safe so we can share all of ourselves. Now, many people think that love is the foundation of relationships, but in fact, it's trust. We need to trust our partner that all of us is acceptable, all of our emotions are okay, and that they have our back when we really need them. Trust is so important so we feel safe to be ourselves and to let ourselves be truly seen. Now, moving into the future of our relationships, things happen. So the chaos can happen and we can repair through chaos. Chaos pushes our edges. When we're in the early stages of a relationship, things are new and it's really exciting. We're focused on each other's happiness, getting to know each other and understanding each other. But later, when we've made mistakes, because that's what we do, us humans are pretty good at making mistakes, and there've been upsets, and they've occurred, and sometimes they get compounded, and things gradually start to change. So how did our communication then become miscommunication? Many of you might realize that men and women's brains are wired actually very different. So women, we process information outwardly. We're going to chat with our girlfriends. We're going to talk things out. We're very much in processing outwardly, and it's the chatty side of us, which we're known for. But men, no, they process inwardly. They like to think about it. They will ponder on it. They will pace about it. It will take them a couple of days. They go into their cave, as it were, to consider things. We are so different. What I mean by our brains are different, they literally are wired where men have way more pathways for logical thinking, and we have more pathways into our emotional center. Now, when our brains are wired differently, it can also be what we're focusing on. Both men and women, we actually have our brains wired for red flags. And this is basically because this is to keep us safe. But we've got way more development in our brain for the red flags to keep us safe. So much so that that's what we end up getting stuck on. Men's brains, when they're wired for logical thinking, this is where we then have them wanting to fix things. And we don't want them to fix us. We want them to listen, to understand us. They're also slower at responding with their emotions because they have less neurological pathways to the emotional part of their brain. So this is what happens when we're talking. So we're communicating to them and we're really wanting them to express themselves through emotions because we can do so easily, but they can't. And it's so much slower for them to access the emotional part of their brain, figure out what it is that they're feeling, and then articulate it. So much slower. So this takes much longer for them. So when we're asking them a question and they're taking their time, we think they're stalling or that they don't care. And this is where we fall into that trap. In the beginning, we gave them the benefit of the doubt. Things go wrong. We make mistakes, as I said before. Upsets occur. Issues get compounded because we're not communicating so well and we're holding on to the negative. We somehow get the magical powers even to read minds. I love that one. You should know what I'm thinking. Don't you know what I want? You should know what I want. Terrible trap to fall into. None of us can read minds. So much damage is done with this change in the way that we're engaging and interacting. Eventually, those rose-colored glasses come off. We're stacking the negative. We no longer give them the benefit of the doubt. And because we're wired to notice the negative things, it takes us so much longer. It's so much harder to see the positive in them. Unfortunately, sadly, that's the way we're wired. So it does take more energy to work through our negative attitudes. The change in our communication is also very evident. What happens when we've really stacked some attitude changes, the rose-colored glasses I said are off, and we're holding our partners up to their mistakes? When we are engaging, we're more invested in what we need to say than what we need to listen or hear. We talk without paying enough attention to what they are registering. So if we don't notice what they're actually registering, we're not aware of really what's going in and how we're going to achieve an outcome, are we? So if our message doesn't land and our intention doesn't come across, we're not achieving effective communication or resolving the issue. We also have lowered our expectations, or we're not communicating our expectations. We have a negative attitude as well, like I said before. Our mindset has changed. Our thinking and our feelings about something or someone is no longer in the good books. Also, our language, our dialogue, which we call the Four Horsemen from the Gottman Institute. The Four Horsemen are very common in arguments, criticism, and when we're criticizing, the other person becomes defensive. Defensiveness becomes compounded. When we feel our partner is always being defensive, we feel they're not taking responsibility for their part in something. Contempt and stonewalling also occur in our relationships. So when we're being critical and when we're being defensive, all these ways of engaging, we're co-creating each other's response. And this is how we get stuck in a negative dialogue. And the interesting thing is, we argue at the surface level. We are so clever at being on the surface and avoiding the core. We're more about who did what or who didn't, what was said and who hurt who the most, etc. And we miss, like I said, getting to the core. Now, there are three categories to the core of what we're really arguing about. One of them, power and control. Whose decision matters more? The other, care and closeness. Do you have my back? Can I trust you? Respect and recognition. Do you value me? Do I matter to you? I hope some of you feel that they are resonating with some of those categories, because moving forward into this masterclass, when we unpack what we really do need to say, it's because it's coming realistically our core from these three categories. How we can create change starts with ourselves. We need to take responsibility. If we have the power to hurt, we have the power to take steps towards healing as well. We all make mistakes. Humans, we're good for it. And in fact, that's how we learn. We learn from our mistakes. So the thing is, it's to fail forward. How can we do better next time? Being compassionate on ourselves and for our partners is extremely important, because we're human. We can't hold them to all their mistakes if we're not prepared to admit we're there as well. We make ours too. And let's not forget also what is an extremely powerful thing and is very much forgotten about. Apologizing is a powerful step towards healing. Now, an apology needs to have various components to it. And a good apology includes awareness of what you did, taking responsibility for how you behaved, and acknowledging the impact you had on the other person, even if they hurt you too. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're apologizing for your part in the situation. Because as the apologizer, your messaging is, man, it's enough. We may have made this mess together, but I own my part. And I'm sorry for what I did. And I'm sorry that I hurt you. That's essentially what we really want to come across. Now, if you're curious about apologizing, there is a lot to it. Now, we have love languages, and there's also apology languages. Did you believe it? I can't until I saw this. Now, you can do this. You can go online and do a free quiz. It's really, really simple. And you'll find that you'll get a very detailed approach to what your apology style is. But essentially, a good apology puts the relationship first. I can't stress that enough. We need to get out of our own discomfort, I should say, and really step up and put the priority on the relationship, not our pride. Our pride is not going to get us anywhere. Because what you will find, what stops us apologizing is very much sometimes our insecurities. Possible discomfort of being vulnerable and fearing rejection or judgment is very common. If you grew up in an environment where apologies were really rare or not received well, you may have that within you as well. I know a lady that really didn't like making mistakes. So she avoided apologizing because it made her feel uncomfortable admitting that she had made a mistake. But once she got into the pattern of knowing how to really put forward a really good apology, it paved the way to so much repair that she got over that completely. Now, some apologies swim in murky waters. And what I mean by that is even if you don't regret what you did, you can apologize for the impact you had on the other person. For example, I'm sorry that my actions have led you to feel this way. It wasn't my intention to hurt you. That's very different, isn't it? There's a difference also when it comes to saying sorry. And for an example is, I'm sorry if I made you feel ... fill in the blanks. That's really different to saying, I am sorry that I hurt you, because that wasn't my intention. When you say, I'm sorry if I made you feel, you're falling into the trap that puts the responsibility on the other person. Again, we do need to always own our part, always in what we're saying sorry for. Now, what makes for a better conversation? There's so much here that we're going to go through. First, we need to take responsibility for our own emotional state, because we can only regulate our own emotions. We can't take responsibility for others' emotions. We can be respectful, but we need to own our own emotional state. Having positive intentions when we approach going into a conversation with our partner to resolve issues with a respectful manner and fairness. It's not always what we say, but how we say it as well. So I recommend be calm, be even-mannered, and be aware of how your emotions may be coming up. You'll find when you slow things down, don't rush, slow things down. When you feel your emotions are rising, really helps regulate your emotions. There are no magical words, by the way. So we just do our best with our truth. We can frame our message designed to be sensitive to the recipient's needs and their mindset and their emotional triggers, but you can't fully avoid upsetting them. Some messages are just hard to hear and upsetting. When we attempt to deliver a message without upsetting, we stray. We stray to managing their emotional state. And as I said, we cannot control someone else's emotional state. That is completely a futile approach. When we try to manage their emotional state, we're very likely to go astray and will avoid full honesty. Now, we've all heard of various passive, aggressive, assertive, passive aggressive. They're wonderful things of communication. The styles are varied. We'll flow in and out of them. But the one I would like to explain more so when we say about passive. Now, passive emotions can get us caught into a lot of trouble, but we don't really achieve anything when we're actually coming from a passive place. We get ourselves stuck and we're not achieving anything because there's a lot of avoidance there. When we're in passive communication, it implies that the other person is more important than we are because we're not communicating properly from where we're coming from. People pleasers tend to have passive communication because they're putting the other people's needs first. The passive communicator is a style of avoidance, and they are more quieter in their approach. Aggressive. Now, aggressive communication is more of the grrr. Aggressive communication implies that you're more important than the other person. Similarly, it's communication that's really aggressive, and it's taking someone else's desires and considerations out of the window. What we're after is assertive. Because when we're being assertive communication basically puts you in a much better place. Others can understand you better. Others are better able to support you. It keeps our emotions from flaring up too much and makes you a more powerful communicator. Now, this is a really important area. And so I'd really like to delve into this a bit more with you guys, because we need to be aware of the impact. When we're passive is saying, I don't care about myself. I only care about you. And that puts us into an I lose, you win scenario. When we're in the aggressive side of things, the aggressive is more, I care about myself. I don't care about you. It's a very strong message. And it's an I win and you lose. Now, the passive aggressive, this is a really interesting area. And I'm going to explain in more detail the passive aggressive because it's intertwined with a few nuances. It's a style of communication in which an individual appears to comply or agree with the other person's request, but in reality, they're indirectly expressing their resistance or even hostility. Instead of confronting the issue or expressing their feelings in a direct way, in an honest way, they express their resentment and anger in a subtle or covert behavior. For example, someone with a passive-aggressive communication style might express their displeasure by giving someone a silent treatment, making sarcastic or snide remarks, procrastinating, or being intentionally forgetful. They may also express their resistance by agreeing on something, but then failing to follow through, some purposely even doing a poor job. It is classic. You may recognize some of these things in your kids. So really what we're aiming for is assertive. Assertive behavior is gold. It really gives you a lot of strength in what you want to achieve. It's very strong in that I care about myself. So you've got beautiful self-respect and healthy boundaries. I care about you. So you've got care and high value for the other person. And it's a win-win for both parties. And you're very clear about what you're saying. There's a lot of honesty. You're able to speak your truth so much better when you have an assertive approach to what you're doing. Now, there are some guidelines here that really help. As you learn to communicate more effectively, there are 6 guidelines to follow. Now, 1, be honest and open about how you feel. Now, this requires you to be vulnerable. You need your partner to connect with you so you can tell your truth. 2, focus on what you want, not what your partner did. Ask yourself how you want to feel or what you want to happen, not on how they're behaving. Don't point the finger. That doesn't achieve anything. 3, be specific about what you want. I need you to take more initiative around the house versus I want you to clean the kitchen after I cook dinner is so much better. 4, have the conversation when you are calm. Now, this is really important because when you're calm, it keeps your defenses down. You may need to wait for the next day to talk about it, but that's okay. Sleep on it, because when you sleep on it, when you wake the next day, it's like hitting the emotional reset button. 5 is about avoiding statements that are judgmental or blaming. Because when we blame, it just puts people in such a defensive mode. It doesn't really achieve too much. Judgy statements, criticism, like I said, blaming will put your partner on such a strong defensive mode, they actually won't even be able to listen to what you're saying. That's how important it is to avoid that. And 6, don't apologize for what you want or what you need. Your desires are nothing to apologize for. If you want something from your partner, it's cool. You can ask for it. They may push back a little or try to negotiate, but that's okay. We all want to be able to have some leeway, but it's okay. Now be mindful of our assumptions, because our assumptions may be the blocks, the barriers to help us get connection with our partners, even to keep us safe. Now, our mindset is really, really important, and it's the one thing we have total control over. Some people practice calming meditation when they're in modes of frustration, overwhelm, anger, because it really can diffuse. So always be aware of what your mindset is, what your emotional state is, even your physical state before going into having a conversation. Because when we're in a lot of physical pain, we're not very patient and we find it really hard to focus. Some of you may have even heard of the hungry mode. If we're hungry, we can be cranky as well. When we're tired, frustrated, or impatient, these things we need to be in check with. Be aware of where we're at. Be mindful of your partner's frame of mind as well and what their emotional triggers are. Don't try and manage your partner's emotional state. That's something that's out of our control, because we will end up avoiding full honesty. So before initiating a crucial conversation, process your own emotions ahead of time. So you need to allow for true feelings to emerge that are underneath the issue and focus on the strong feelings and their source. So when you do this, you're able to take focus then of what is really important for you and what is really going on under the surface. Because this is the best approach, because after all, we're trying to get to the core of the issue. What needs possibly are there that we're wanting to be met, that are being missed? Another thing, don't ambush. That's not playing fair. At the end of the day, fight fair. We're in this together. You need to sit down in a much better frame of mind. So you agree on a time to sit down together. You're both moods, they're good. You know what's coming because you've asked to have the conversation. You're relaxed. You're not feeling defensive. Because active listening is really important here. You need to be curious to understand their point of view. You're not there to push your point. You're there to understand each other's point of view, because there's always two perspectives at any given time. And again, importantly, let's stay focused on keeping it as simple as we can. Our emotions are what count here. We need to identify what's really happening for us. And when we talk with I language, this is the perfect place to come from, because we're owning our own emotions here. So when you communicate your feelings and what you desire for an outcome, you're not attacking. You're keeping it nice and simple with the conversation. So how a conversation starts will actually determine how it ends. So using I language will focus on your own feelings and how you are affected and what you want and what you need. And there's a big difference between these examples. I feel like I'm not heard versus you never listen to me. Or here's another one. You're always prioritizing your stuff and you don't care that I'm left doing everything with the kids versus, hey babe, I need your help with the kids. I'm feeling overwhelmed with dinner and bath time. Lately, I've been doing more of the kids, which makes me feel alone. I don't really want to resent each other. So let's talk and find a way to work things out together, because I would like to work better as a team. We can always change the way we ask of something rather than coming in a more critical, attacking way. A softened startup is what we're aiming for, because like I said, how we start a conversation will determine how it ends. The art of listening. Some people say, yeah, I'm a really good listener, but are we really? The art of listening is to be an active listening process. We need to be curious. It's important to have no distractions, turn your phone off, don't have the TV on in the background or the radio. The kids, if you need to have a good discussion and you do have children, be sure that children are settled and they're not around, so they're not going to interrupt you. Please don't be judgmental. When you come in hard with judgment, again, defensiveness comes up. So no judgment. And we're here to listen to understand. So when we're really listening to understand, we're also listening for emotions. We can see it in their face, their body language, when we even hear it in their tone of voice. So always be mindful of addressing when you actually are hearing and listening for emotions and they're there. We need to be vulnerable so we can share openly our own feelings. Being respectful of your partner's boundaries and don't push their triggers is really important, because that's only going to derail the conversation. We need to keep it on track. Showing empathy and validating feelings is very important when we're active listening. Putting ourselves in their shoes. It might be a situation we've not experienced. We can have an imaginary empathy as well. Validating feelings is really important, because no feelings are wrong. No one can tell us our feelings aren't right. Our feelings are ours and they're there. Our emotions and feelings are data about what's going on for us, and they're valid and they deserve to be validated. Using I language is important because it keeps you in track to owning your own stuff. And creating a safe place is what all this does when we're holding a safe, special place for a quality conversation. Be prepared for compromise as well. When we're open to each other's influence, you'll find that we're actually able to meet each other's needs so much better. This doesn't mean at all that you're giving up on your core needs when you're open to your partner's influence. It just means it's important to respect and honor what's important for each other. And lastly, don't fight for the right to be right. If you're holding on and you want to be right, holding the righteous ground gets us absolutely nowhere. We're creating more blocks for resolution. And what we're aiming for is breaking patterns. When we get stuck in negative communication patterns, the same thinking and the same processes that's got us there is not going to be the same processes to create change. Which brings me to that there's a 3-part formula to actually opening up conversation. Now that 3-part formula, ladies, I really hope you got your pens ready. The simplicity here is a framework. And this framework is what is going to enable us to process information so much better. So we're prepared with really good intention and a calm mindset to have a much better quality conversation. And that first area I would like you to focus on is to seek to understand. Now, there are 2 perspectives always here, right? So to seek to understand is to address the situation from your partner's perspective. When we address the situation from our partner's perspective, we're enabled to actually put ourselves in their shoes. So we imagine what's going on for them. Be curious, be empathetic. You're going to construct your softened startup from this perspective. Now, secondly, talk about what you're feeling. And this is about what you're feeling or affected by the situation. You're going to use I language and you're going to use active listening here. And the third, state what you need. State what you need by making a request. What it looks like, what it feels like for you. So what it looks like for your need to be met. And you express your gratitude that you really appreciate them listening and coming to the party and having this conversation to resolve what you'd like. Now, the worksheet. I really hope you've got that worksheet ready. So if you don't, I'm just going to give you a few seconds, grab your pen, because that worksheet is what we're going to go through right now. Now, on the worksheet, you've got a few questions. These questions are very, very powerful because they're going to help you get to the root, to get to the core of why you were upset. Sometimes we're only stuck on the surface, but that surface stuff is really blocking the way to really having a really good conversation. You want to start with describing the conversation. The situation as it was. If you were in a movie, how would you describe a scene in a movie? Describe the situation to yourself. What happened? What am I upset about? Be specific about what you were upset about. Then the next one, what do I want? What is my truth? Now, again, there's no wrong thing here. Your truth is your truth, and be comfortable with that. You have the right to your own truth. What do I think will happen if I tell the truth? Now, this can sometimes hold us back. What scares us the most about telling the truth? Will this really happen? If I believe it will, how do I know? Now, remember, we can make assumptions, and assumptions are a dark place to fall into. So be clear that you know that what you're going to do is for good intentions. Again, I mentioned before, what are my rights in this situation? Everyone has assumptions about things. We have our insecurities and stuff. What are our rights in a situation? Relationships can be murky. I actually have written a very cool mini ebook on know our relationship rights, men or women. It's absolutely gold. And it's all the amazing, emotional, insecure traps of assumptions we create for ourselves. And I'm going to actually email you each that ebook as a gift for attending this masterclass this evening. And you want to know what your partner's rights are, well, because we're 50-50 here. When you answer clearly all those questions, what you'll have is background on how you're going to start your conversation, because you'll have a better understanding coming from understanding insights on your partner's perspective, what was going on for them, because this is how you're going to start, essentially, your softened starter. Once you have done that, it's going to lead you into the next part, because in the next part, this is where you create the script to assertively and effectively communicate. And those parts are, you're going to answer the questions is, what is going on for your partner? What's their situation? You literally write it out to what you're now aware and feel their perspective is. And then how does it affect me? How do I feel about what happened? What do I need? When you're able in a fluid way to simply answer that, boom, 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 boom. How it affected me was this. How do I feel what happened? What do I need? You'll find it falls into place. What do I want from my partner? What specific action could my partner take to improve the situation? When you hear yourself say the answer to that, you'll find it becomes so much more simpler. Now we have an example. So all that I've spoken through there, you have an example of a scenario. So let's call this couple Sarah and Tony. Now Tony's occupying his time in the garage with his hobby, and Sarah's been left most of the responsibility for managing the two kids and all the household chores, and she also works part-time on her job. Because he's been in the garage occupied with his hobby, she feels abandoned by him, and no amount of asking for his help is changing anything. She's at her wit's end. In fact, on one occasion, she had stormed into the garage and demanded, what's so important out here that you're ignoring your family? And the most recent argument was after she had asked again for his help, and to no avail, it all went off the wagon. Now, using the 3-part formula and the worksheet for effectively communicating, Sarah now has a better understanding of the situation and how to approach it. So Sarah knows that Tony is under a lot of stress at work. He has a major work project, and it's just grueling because things aren't coming together and the pressure on him is overwhelming. So by starting from understanding his perspective, framing the start of the conversation from this helps and leads her to being able to state what she needs more simply. So what we end up with is a dialogue that's like this. Honey, I know you've been working hard and there's a lot of pressure on you to complete the project. I can imagine that you're tired at the end of the day and you just want to relax. And I know the kids aren't always the most relaxing people to be around, and doing chores isn't pleasant either. When I'm left home alone in the house to manage the kids while you're out here in the garage and do all the chores, I feel alone and disconnected from you. Sometimes I even wonder if you're losing interest in me, and that makes me anxious. That's when I get upset with you, like I did last week. I'd like to talk about how we can have a better conversation, because I need your help. I want to have a conversation how I can get your help and how you can get the relaxation you need. It's a softened way. It gets to the point so much better. So what you end up having when Sarah steps into this in a much better way, she's constructed a way to talk without blaming him. She was honest and specific. She focused on what she wanted and what her husband, and not what he did. Remained calm, which is really important. She didn't apologize or blame anything. Now, the 3-part formula helped her remain focused and calm and kept her not from blaming him. You want to avoid the blame. She was mindful of her partner's needs, because he needed to relax as well. And so she wanted to fulfill and meet those needs for him too. She did not place demands on him. She just knew that things could be more flexible, of course, and she requested that they talk about it so they could come and meet their needs in an appropriate way. So what you find is, if you work to the 3-part formula, hold yourself in a good frame, work on answering those questions on that worksheet, you'll find you take a really small scenario, because start with the small things first, ladies. Don't go in big guns on the big problems. You need to get more familiar with this approach. So if you know you've got small issues, take this approach, the 3-part formula, with your worksheet. Take the small issue and work through it in that way, and come up with your softened startup. And you will find when you go to your partner in a way like that, they won't get defensive. They'll be open to having a conversation that has been set with intention and calm to have a resolution. And you're setting a framework to have a more open, honest conversation. The demands we put on our partners don't need to be demands. We can put them as a request. And you'll find yourself, when you know yourself, when someone requests something of you, you feel so much better than when someone demands and gets cranky. And this is what we don't want for each other. Open, honest conversations, the way to go. So congratulations, girls. I really hope this has been of help. You've learned a lot about communication more effectively. And again, I do suggest trying it on the small issues before tackling the big ones. That way you'll get better at it before you take on the hard conversations that you really want to be aiming for to resolve. So undoubtedly, this will avoid flaring up in those emotions and will help you stick to the message that you want to get across. So this is us helping couples reconnect. So Retune, we run workshops, and I love the workshops. The workshops are absolutely gold for teaching couples how to do relationships well. We also do a 1-to-1 6-month coaching program. It's an or even ad hoc coaching for men and women. So if you're curious about what we do more, this is it. I have ebooks, and you will receive my first mini ebook on relationships and the rights that we have within our relationships. It's kind of cute. And on our website that you see here, we actually have a free relationship health quiz. It's so cool. And it has percentages. You'll get your results, and you'll know then the gaps in your relationships and the areas that you can focus on where you know you need the most work. And if there are areas that you find really challenging, please reach out. We're here to help, because we don't know what we don't know. Our next workshop is actually happening very soon. It's the 27th and 28th of May. It's only 396 per day. So it's a couples only as well. It's an education. It's not group therapy. You'll have many aha moments. It's very rare. I think one of Sue Johnson's famous quotes that I love so much is, people will educate themselves on everything possible except for the one thing, which is the most important thing for us, and that's having healthy, loving relationships. So this is what Retune Couples Weekend Workshops is a breakthrough in helping couples have healthy, loving relationships. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate all your time listening here. And if you have any questions, I would love you to put your hand up and answer questions. You can take yourself off mute if you like. I am more than happy to answer any questions, clarify anything that we've been through today, or if there's anything you have specific you want to know. No questions. That's magic. So I really hope with the fact that there's no questions, that it means that you are all good. Thank you so much. It's been my absolute pleasure. And I really hope that what I shared with you gave you some wonderful aha moments. And I can't stress enough to practice on the small stuff before you go in bigger. Thank you so much, ladies. You are most welcome. And it's been an absolute privilege serving you guys tonight. So there is a question, is how do you start a conversation if your partner is taken off and not wanting to talk? The simplicity there is to sit down, not allow your emotion to get steamrolled, and simply ask, I care about our relationship. And I do feel that there is more that we can improve. We got in this mess together. It's not just one of us. It's how we're engaging that has got us here. And you own it. I take responsibility for in the ways that I've hurt you. And I don't want this to be happening between us. So I'd say pave the way at actually saying that you are unhappy and that you want the relationship to improve, but own it. Actually own that it's not all them. Because you'll find that a lot of the times that men don't say anything and they don't come forward and say stuff because they literally are fearing that what they say might make it worse because they're not so comfortable necessarily speaking from their emotional place. So if you pave the way by saying that we got in this mess together, it's not all you. And I think it works so much better if we work things out together. And we don't have to start on the big stuff. Let's just start on some small things that we know aren't working and just start with baby steps and say, will that work for you? Would you feel better and more comfortable if we just start slowly and work things together? And you may find that may touch them and realize that you're not blaming them and they don't have to run away from you. And by saying that the relationship really matters, that they really matter to you, is a way to go. Yep, the safe space idea was great. I always think that honoring each other is the way to go and showing that you really appreciate him. So is there any more questions, ladies? Because I know we have partners that are very worn out and see any type of conflict as an attack. So be very careful because criticism is perceived as an attack. So please don't criticize. Put a complaint forward more so than a criticism. He came home tonight and got annoyed that the kids had left some mess on the kitchen bench. I asked him not to bring negative energy into the house. So now he was left the house after sending me a text message that he feels attacked, but I am the one he was attacking. It's very interesting because the chances are, like, again, we know how we argue about the surface stuff. So he's come home and he's upset that the kids have left the stuff on the kitchen bench.
So it's not about the stuff on the kitchen bench. It's really not. So there may be values here that he may value a home that's kept tidy. He may value organization. He might be even a person that needs things to be clean and tidy. So if he's come home from a stressful day, what gives him his sense of relaxing and coming home to being grounded and in a home that's where he can relax is when there's no chaos. And for him, when there's mess, he might view that as chaos. So I would say a really good way of approaching it is saying, I really am curious because you know the kids are messy and you know the kids are neglectful because kids are kids. I would really need to understand what about the mess on the kitchen sink really pisses you off. Because the children are always going to be little people that we pick up after. And I can't always be vigilantly behind them. I'm not a helicopter parent. That's not my style. What about the mess really is upsetting you? Try and get to the core about it. Yes, he attacked you, but it's unfortunately a frustration coming out in the wrong way. That you could say, using I language, hey, babe, the comment I received felt like an attack. I'm sorry that the kitchen was still messy. I'm frustrated too. I had cleaned it and I was unaware that the kitchen was messy. I didn't realize the children had left their stuff. If that's the truth, please always be the truth, but use your I language, how you felt, how his tone affected you. But try, like I said before, this is a classic situation to try and understand what's his perspective. What is actually going on for him right now? Where's he coming from? And if you're not sure, ask, hey, babe, you were annoyed. Yeah, I get that because the kids messing up the kitchen gives me the shits too. But I'm really curious. Your reaction was a big one. What about the kitchen being messy really pisses you off? Tell me more about that and see if he will give you a more explicit answer for you, because you want to get to the root of it. The kids are messy. Yeah, but what about that mess? Why did it annoy you? I hope that helps. Working together as a team is golden. I actually use this one a lot in the situation with families. I would say getting to the root of that's really important. Like I said, asking him, I really appreciate that we could have a conversation to work out how much better we can work as a team, because I feel we'll get more done and we both will be more relaxed about the stuff that has to get done around the house. Thank you, everybody. I really, really hope that's helped. But again, start from putting yourself in their world so you know more about what's going on. And when you're not sure, ask, hey, babe, I can see you're stressed right now, and I'm really curious what's going on for you because I care. Please tell me what's going on. And if they only give you a few words, that's cool. And and again, listen for emotion. If you see sadness there or you see some frustration, address that. I said, oh, I saw that you got a bit agitated there. Tell me. And I said, tell me more about that. You know what your partner is like. You know them. Don't be shy to hold back, to want to know more about what's going on in the world, because we can't read minds. We never will be able to read a mind, and people are constantly changing. There's stuff that goes on in our work, relationships with bosses, team members that can put us at stress, and we bring it home. Again, we can't read minds. So check in, have a conversation that demonstrates that you care about what is going on in their world. Thank you, ladies. I'm really, really appreciative of time. We have gone over time. So I'm going to sign off, and look out in your emails because you're going to have an ebook from me as a gift. And I really appreciate your time here this evening. And that is ciao now. Bye for now.